a minik to a minik. Blowing shofar and el is a minik anyway. Right? The din is to blow, the mitzvah is to blow shofar Rosh Hashanah. The custom is to blow shofar el. And then there's a custom to the custom. What's the custom to the custom? That when first day of Chodesh El, which is still Lamed Menachem. So it's not Elul, so you're not going to blow shofar, but it's like Chodesh El, so you need to blow shofar, so you practice. The Rebbe says, B'chlala minhag Yisrael, every custom that the Jewish people have is not so much the Torah as it is Yidden. And here you have in effect, now these are my words, a custom to a custom, so it's Yidden even more. And the Rebbe connects the shofar of the first of Chodesh Elul to the one sound of shofar you blow, Matzah Yom Kippur. There's one, you blow at Tkiyah G'dayla, which means technically that yesterday, if it wasn't Shabbos, you would have blown one Tkiyah, it would have been a Tkiyah G'dayla. Until the Rebbe spoke to Sikha and it's printed in the Likutei Sichos. Okay, you practice. How do you? I presume practicing means you blow Tkiyah Shvarim through a Tkiyah. But when the Rebbe explained that it has a neshama, came a very different thing. But I learned a maimer. This summer I didn't teach here, but for those of you who are on my group, you know that I was very busy. So one of the maimer that I learned, the Rebbe says that in El there's many minhagim, but the most important minhag in El is L'David Hashem Eiri. What is the proof that the most important minhag in El is David Hashem Eiri? The proof is that you start the first day of Chodesh. Shofar you start the second day. The three kapitel a day, which starts today, right? Today we're going to say, in addition to all the other tilim, we're going to say kapitel Aleph, Beis, and Gimel. And this is going to continue until Tes Nisan, when we'll say whatever it is, Kuf Yud Beis, Kuf Yud Gimel, and Kuf Yud Dalet. And we'll leave 36 kapitlach for Yom Kippur itself. We'll do 9 before Kol Nidrei, 9 after Kishmash Alamita, 9 after Musaf, and 9 after Ne'ilah. This is a minhag from Baal Shem Tov. It's a minhag from Baal Shem Tov. The Rebbe Rayatz, the Frierdiker Rebbe, revealed that from Chodesh El till Yom Kippur, you complete the whole Tilim according to this design. But the first day of Chodesh, which was yesterday, we didn't do that. But we said David Hashem Eiri. So I learned two Maimorim that mentioned David Hashem Eiri. I learned two Maimorim that mentioned David Hashem Eiri. One of the Maimorim mentioned the classic idea of David Hashem Eiri. The classic idea of David Hashem Eiri is L'cha Oma Libi Bakshu Fonai Es Penecha Avaya Avakish. I don't know if you know this, that it's kind of obvious. The David Hashem Eiri is one of those psalms that every single community has a different favorite pasuk. I don't know how many psukim it is. But every single pasuk could be your favorite. Every single pasuk. There's so Avi Yivim Yazavuni Vavaya Sveini Luli Hermanti Luli is Asias Elul Kaveil Adeshem. Every pasuk in the David Hashem Eiri, some community favors. Sfardim, Ashkenazim, Chassidim, Misnagdim, Ichveis. Jews from Iraq, Jews from Yemen, Jews from Persia, Jews from Morocco, Jews from Egypt, Jews from Italy. Every year you're going to find another favorite pasuk. In Chabad, Chassidus, the favorite pasuk is this one, the pasuk that nobody understands. L'cha Omar Libi Bakshu Fonai Es Penecha Avaya Avakish. The literal translation of these words are: to you speaks my heart, seek my face, your face. I'm supposed to say, oh God, yeah, I will seek. Say, your face, God, I will seek. What's the pshat in the pasuk? The pshat in the pasuk is that every human being has an outside and an inside. What's called the chitzonius halev and the pnimius halev. An outer heart and the inner heart. The outer heart comes from the brain. The inner heart comes from the neshama. So l'cha amalibi is a conversation between a person and himself. L'cha amalibi, to you, to the outer heart speaks the inner heart. And the inner heart, the subconscious, says to the outer heart, to the consciousness of the person, Bakshufana, seek my face, seek the pnimius. Meaning, a whole year, it's okay for a Yid to serve Hashem with his outer heart. Meaning to say, his avodas Hashem is based on his mind and his heart and his awareness, his conscience, his consciousness. When it comes Elul, you say, L'cha amalibi Bakshufana, Penecha Vayavakish Yizuch, pnimius halev, the inner heart, which of course is consistent with the idea of Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim and Melach Pasada. That in Chassidus Chabad, I think, is the most important pasuk. But in one of the Maimorim that I learned, the Rebbe says the most important pasuk of David Hashem Oidi V'Yishi. Oidi V'Yishi says in a lot of different mefarshim in my Chazal, but the Rebbe brings that Oidi V'Yishi means Teda Mitzvahs. L'davar Hashem Oiri v'Yishi. Oiri means my light, and Yishi means my salvation. Oiri goes on Torah, Oir, and Yishi goes on mitzvahs. And how does the Rebbe explain it? I'm just saying as a word. We're going to learn Tanya, but I'm saying this as a word. How does the Rebbe explain it? The Rebbe explains it by saying that spirituality needs a vessel. Ruchnius needs something to hold on to. Because if you have Ruchnius and there's nothing to hold on to, it doesn't exist in this world. And practically, it's unsustainable. You can't be a Yid on Kavanah, it's impossible. You can't be a Yid on feelings. You can't be a Yid on mood. The feelings are important, the spirituality is important, the mood is important. But you need to have something to make it last. The point is that Ruchnius by itself is unsustainable. A person who has very great spiritual experiences, if they want spiritual experiences to last for 70 or 80 years, if they're Avraham Avinu, it's okay. But for most people, it's good for a little while. What sustains it, what holds it, is a practical life. Teda mitzvah. You know, that says in all of my Marim that the one chesadim with Tishrei, the one chesadim with the Yamim, the Royim, is that we're missing mitzvahs. Tishrei is 10 days. A whole year is not Tishrei, but what sustains, what Tishrei gives us in those 10 days is practical kiyum mitzvahs. So the Rebbe says that's like the David Hashem Oiri v'Yishi. That comes Elul, and Elul is Melech Basada. It's as Hashem gives us, the king in the field. And from our end, Elul is tshuva. Tshuva means making a stock of our lives and connecting ourselves to the Eibishter. A lot of the things that we do during this time of year are defined mostly by spirituality. The sustenance, the endurance, the sustainability of this spirituality is Oiri v'Yishi, is practically learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. This is a very important yesod. What keeps us as Jews is the Ma'isa HaMitzvahs. What sustains all the inspirations that we may have over time is Ma'isa HaMitzvahs. So the Rebbe says the first day, the Chodesh Elul, you're first beginning the spiritual process, and you already say the Davar Hashem Oiri v'Yishi. That sustaining spirituality requires Torah and mitzvahs. So this is my word. I'm not saying my eagerness, versteht sich, you understand yourself, I don't come here with my own material. Let's learn this in a maimer, so I'm sharing it with you. And now let's learn Tanya. I haven't been here for a few weeks. The summer has been very intermittent. I think next summer, I have kids who are now married and who are now on shlichus. So that's how it goes. You have to visit, whatever the story is. They come to you, you go to them. The reason I haven't been here, I have excuses. So I don't know how we're going to do it in future summers. But it was a very intermittent. I'm back. I'm not going to say I'm not going to miss a Sunday. But if you belong to one of the groups, you got messages. If you don't know when the class is on or off, either join my group or join Mrs. Yuzevich's group. The difference is Mrs. Jeffrey's group just gives you information. My group is going to give you a lot of classes. So decide what you want. Now Rabbi said we're learning Tanya and we're on page 54, Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis. We are 6 lines into Perek Chav Beis. That's what we were holding. We're 6 lines into chapter 22. The Alter Rebbe does something unusual. It's not the only place in Tanya, but this is one of those places where, to use a lashon from Chazal, it's a piska be'emtze pasuk. The Alter Rebbe starts a Perek in the middle of a conversation. He doesn't finish one conversation, finish a Perek, and then start the next conversation, the next Perek. He dafke had a conversation with us in chapter 21 in Perek Chaf Aleph, and he ended it in the middle, and he left the next few lines that we learned last time we learned for the beginning of Perek Chav Beis. Why the Alter Rebbe does it this way? So my standard answer to that question is that the last time I talked to the Alter Rebbe, we agreed that I shouldn't reveal this secret. Of course, I have no idea why. But that's the fact. Alter Rebbe starts Chav Beis with the word rak. It's mamish in the middle of a conversation. It's only, you should know. However, and we talked about the rak last time. I'm not talking about the rak this time. I am beginning with the kol kach govru v'otzmu hatzimtzumim. That means on page 54, the second line from the top of the page. The big picture Rabbi say is that the Alter Rebbe is presenting us with 2 sides of a coin. One side of a coin is Achdus Hashem. But Hashem knows the truth. Besides for the Eibishter, there's nothing. But he's also presenting us with the other side of the coin. And the other side of the coin is, to paraphrase the Alter Rebbe's words, right? Ve'ein shum shina l'fanav yizbarech ela ha'mekablim. That when the Eibishter made the world, if you know what the Eibishter knows, you know that ve'ein shum shina l'fanav yizbarech, nothing has changed. Ela ha'mekablim. But to us, there is a change. So the first half of this conversation was teaching us how Hashem sees the creation. And the second half of that conversation is teaching us how we see the creation. And in as much as we see the creation, there's two basic ideas. Basic, I always tell my students that basically is a bad word. Basically, approximately, more or less, I can't explain it. Basically is pseudo-intellectual. Smart people don't say basically. Smart people say precisely. Yeah, but basically, there's two levels of the conversation. The first level of the conversation is that are called Elam Ein Seif, worlds that Hashem created that are godly. Now, worlds that Hashem created that are godly don't either exist to the Eibishter, because from the Eibishter's perspective, Ein Oid Muvade means the only thing that exists is Him. But from our point of view, that worlds do exist, the worlds that exist that are godly are true. This is the way I taught it to you. Elam Ein Seif, which means higher than Atzilus and Atzilus, although to the Eibush that they don't either exist, but to us that they do exist, they're emes. They're Elam Ha'emes, because godliness is true. So the conversation that the Rebbe has with us about our point of view consists, first of all, how we understand worlds that are true, because they're a lakus, and worlds that are false because they're klipa. Worlds that are true means they're revealing the emes. Worlds that are true is they're covering over the emes. And this is where we begin now. We are now going to be introduced to Elam HaSheker. We're now going to introduced to worlds that exist only from our point of view that are not even there. They're not even there to us. They're not even true. So let's read it inside, okay? V'kol kach, and to such a degree, gavru v'otzmu ha-tzimtzumim, is there a strengthening and an intensifying of the tzimtzumim. Tzimtzumim is translated in English contractions. Tzimtzum means to diminish, to make the light less. V'hester ponim ha'yonim, and hiding the true face of the Eibishter, ad, the chain of contraction, the chain of tzimtzum, the chain of diminution from world to world continues. Sheyuchlu lehishaves ulehibares, it becomes possible for there to be the creation of gam dvarim tmeim, even things that are spiritually impure, or klipis, and things which are klipa, v'sitra achara, and things that are on the other side. Ulekabel chayusam v'kiyuma, that they should continue to get their life, and they should continue to get their existence. Midvar Hashem v'ruach piv yizbarach, from the words of Hashem's mouth and the air of Hashem's mouth, but they're getting them in such a way that it's behester upon him. Hashem is hiding His face. V'yeridas hamadreges, and He's descended through the steps until the point that you have dvarim tmeim, and you have klipa, and you have sitra achara. Now, Rabbi, I want to pause here, okay? Now, I looked at, before I started to teach, I looked at the last Tanya class. Yeah? I have given you 126 classes. I'm holding Perek Chav Beis. 126 classes since we started. This is our third time around that we were learning Tanya together since 25 years, since 30 years ago when we started learning Tanya, 27, 28 years ago. And there are certain things that I make a point of stopping and teaching. If you follow how I do things, certain ideas I dedicate complete classes to words, and I explain the word klipa, and I explain the word sitra achra, and I explain the word elokim acherim, and I explain the words of Avodah Zarah. These words are going to come up again in chapter 24, Perek Chav Daled. When I get to Perek Chav Daled, I'm going to give you probably, if I remember and my plans hold true, a much more detailed discussion. The Rebbe says four things. It's a mantra. Chapter 24 has a quotable quote. He says it again and again and again and again. You should know, Sitra Achara equals Klipa equals Elikim Achayim because of Avodah. They're all the same. Here, the Rebbe doesn't say all four of them. He says only two of them, but he adds a third. Devarim Tmeim, Klipis, V'Sitra Achara. You see, things which are spiritually impure and Klipa and Sitra Achara. I'm going to go in order. You must understand, I make a living teaching Tanya. I get paid to teach Tanya. It's a good life, I gotta tell you. It's a very good life. But it means that a lot of what I do is Shalei Lishma. You're teaching Pnimiyas HaTeira and you're getting a schad for it. It's a very big problem. But when I teach, I learn. Don't misunderstand. How many times have I learned this Pedic? How many times? You can't imagine how many times I learned this Pedic. It may not be a guzman that I've learned this Pedic 100 times, maybe more. Over the years, maybe more, maybe 200 times. Because I teach it and I practice, and I have to prepare it each time, yeah? And Kumt Alamo too, Tanya's Teresh B'Ksav, you never finish learning Tanya. Each time around, you simply see things you never saw before. This round, I've been teaching you things that I didn't see the second time around than the first time around. And one of the things that I made a very, very big deal out of when we learned chapter 6 was the word Tumah. Tumah is a funny word. It's a very, very, very funny word. What does Tumah mean? Klipa I understand. Sitra Achara I understand. Avodah Zarah I certainly understand. Those words, Sitra Achara, Klipa, Avodah Zarah, Elikim Achayim, they mean separation. That's what they mean. There is a God, and then there are entities who get everything they have from that God, and they deny Him. That's all. It's not, yeah. But what does Tumah mean? And in chapter 6, in Pedic Vov, when the Alter Rebbe introduced us to Klipa, he very clearly, and it happens a lot in the Tanya, it's one of the words in the Tanya that everybody skips. It's there, but no one knows what to do with it, at least in my experience. What is the word Tumah doing in the Tanya? So what is Tumah? What is Tumah? How do you understand the phenomena of Tumah? There's some place at Rashi that connects the word Tumah to bones, to bone. What is Tumah? How do you exactly place the word Tumah? It's a very, very hard word to place, yeah? So I guess, let's contrast it. What's the opposite of Tumah? What's the opposite of Tumah? The opposite of Tumah is Tahara, right? The opposite of Tumah is Tahara. What does Tahara mean? Clean. Tahara means clean. Tahara is a means to an end, right? A person who's clean can put on nice clothes. A person who's pure can understand fine ideas. But the purity and the cleanliness are a means to an end, right? When you have Tahara, then you can have Kedusha. When you have Tahara, then you can have other good midas. But Tahara means clean. Tumah, we're going to translate Tumah, it means nishtrein, unclean, or to use a term which you see a lot in our readings, zuhama. What means zuhama? What's zuhama? What's a schmutz? What kind of schmutz? What kind of schmutz? It's a ruchnizdike schmutz. Zuhama means heipech atara. If things are not pure, so then there's impurity. And I wish to talk about this for a moment, because I think it's one of the edel ideas. It's woven through the whole Tanya. Tumah comes up in Tanya again and again and again and again, and it has a message. It has a message. And I don't mean to give musar. I'm a teacher. I'm not saying this to make people feel bad. I'm just trying to teach you the Tanya as to the best of my limited abilities. One of the ideas which weaves its way through the Tanya is that every single thing, and every single action, and every single change requires energy. Nothing happens without koyach. I'm alive because I have a neshama. I raise my hand because I use the energy from my neshama. And the same is true when I roll a rock down the hill. That rock rolled down the hill. There was a certain requirement of energy. And everything that exists has life. Everything that exists has life. In other words, I'm alive because there's a neshama inside of me. I raised my hand because I used the energy that my neshama gave my goof to be able to raise my hand. I rolled a stone down the hill. That stone rolled down the hill because there's life in the stone, there's life in the hill, and there's life in inertia. And when you push it and it rolls, there's There's an expenditure of energy. The pnimius of energy is highest. The pnimius of energy is life. There is life, which is the basis of this response, of this effect, of what's transpiring. So the Alter Rebbe establishes as a foundational idea. In no place in creation is there anything where there is no life. In no place in creation is there anything where there is no life. And it's not only true of things, it's true of activities. Mrs. Yusevich, if this is how it's going to be, I cannot teach. I'm saying the amount of disruptions, it's impossible. The Shaykh. Ich habe keine Teilnis nicht, but I can't. If you could just put a table or something, it's too, people just keep walking in and out. It's like as if I'm not here. Okay, now. So if I'm doing I'm eating breakfast. So there's the energy I'm going to get from the breakfast. And then there's the energy of eating the breakfast. Simple. Right? I'm sitting and writing. Whatever I'm writing a letter, I'm sending an email message to my electric company or to my gas company. If I am doing an action, there is energy. And if I'm doing an action and there is energy, the energy has to come from someplace. And there's only two choices. That's the bottom line. There's only two choices. Either the energy comes from Kedusha or the energy comes from Klippa. Because in Tanya, in Pnimis HaTorah Kabbalah, this is not halacha. In Tanya, for something to be Klippa, it doesn't need to be bad. That's the chap. For something to be Klippa, it doesn't need to be bad. It needs to not be good. As I explained to you at length when we learned chapter 6, in Nigla de Teira, there's three groupings. Chiyuv, what you must do. Isser, what you're not allowed to do. And Heter, do whatever you want. In Pnimis HaTorah, there's two things. Kedusha and Klippa. Kedusha means bittul, and Klippa means not bottle. If something exists, and it's not bottle of the Eibishter, he's a nice guy, he's not bothering anybody, but he's not bottle of the Eibishter, we call that Klippas Noiga. He's benign, he's parv. It's Klippa. It's Klippa. Klippa means it's not bottle to Hashem. So everything that exists, and every action that I perform, and that's how this word comes into the Tanya. Every time I do something, I'm drawing life from someplace to do that deed. So if it's a Kedusha deed, I'm drawing life from Kedusha. If it's a non-Kedusha deed, and I'm saying the word non-Kedusha because I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm eating breakfast, I'm just not having a specifically holy kavanah. I'm playing ball, which is a good idea if I played ball. I can assure you, it'd be a very good idea if I exercised. You can ask my siblings. It'd be a very good idea if I actually did some exercise. Yeah, but if I'm not thinking that I'm doing it l'shem shamayim, so I'm not drawing dayis from kedusha. If I'm not drawing chayis from kedusha, I'm drawing chayis from what's not kedusha. Is it bad? It's not bad, but it's not good. And this is why the Alter Rebbe brings the word tumah into the Tanya. He brings the word into the Tanya to explain the ruchnizdike significance of Parav. The ruchnizdike significance of Parav means I'm not doing it for a good kavanah, I'm not doing it for a bad kavanah, I'm doing it with no kavanah. You should know that it's a shaykhis to tumah. What's tumah? It's not clean. Now, is not clean dirty? Is not clean dirty? Depends how clean you are, right? There's a subjectivity to it, correct? Right? It's not clean dirty. When I was a child, my malaman gave me a very simple mashal. A person is wearing blue overalls and he works in the sewer, yeah? And a little bit of he's wearing navy blue, his outfit is come out black. And something which is almost the same color, yeah? It takes a lot of schmutz for it to be schmutzig. If he's wearing a white fine silk, the smallest speck is intolerable. There's a certain relativism to clean and dirty, but there isn't a relativism to Tara and Tumah. Tumah means it's not clean. If it's not clean, to say it's mamish schmutzig, to say it's really dirty, for that it's got to be bad, you understand? But the Alter Rebbe uses this word Tumah because he wants to impress upon us this idea that since everything that exists has life, and there are only two sources of life, that's the point, there's not three. There's two sources of life, Kedusha and Klippa. Kedusha means batel l'Eibishter. Klippa isn't necessarily bad. Klippa means Einei batel l'Yisbarach, something which is not batel, which is Klippa. So what difference does it make? It's not bad, it's not good, it's not bad. What is it? It's Tumah. What's Tumah? Reine das nicht. It's not clean. So I think, the Alter Rebbe uses the word tumah a lot in Tanya. And usually when he uses the word tumah, it's about the chayas that we take. I'm doing an activity. If my activity is holy, I'm drawing chayas from kedusha. If my activity is not holy, I have to draw chayas from someplace. And I'm not drawing chayas from kedusha, so I'm automatically drawing chayas from klipa. Even a klipa which is very edel, and you're not going to call him bad, but it's tumah. This is the Alter Rebbe's way, I think, of helping us appreciate refinement. That's how it comes out. It's edel. Refinement. The refinement is, let's use colloquial language, right? For something to be clean, is it enough that it's not dirty, or does it have to be clean? For something to be dirty, is it enough that it's not clean, or it has to be dirty? These are philosophically useless questions. There's relativism, but the point is, where's the focus? If purity is an absolute, then anything less than pure is not good. If dirty is an absolute, anything less than dirty is okay. And it's really true. And in life it's that way. In other words, we serve Hashem based on who we are. We serve Hashem based on who we are. We can't help it. Right? People, a younger man stopped me in the street this Friday night, and I could have danced the Kazatske because I know this person for many, many, many years. It's like when the Shoma came back from Gehenna, and he's complaining, I cannot tell you where this boy has been. And he's worried about Chabad. Why does the Chabad talk about his abundance? I was so happy to have that Tanya. It was a delightful problem to have, but he wouldn't back off. I have to explain to him why his abundance is not front and center in the avodah of Chabad, and I couldn't. It's not easy to explain. But the point is, there is a certain relativism to avodas Hashem. The Tanya doesn't have relativism. The Tanya says the truth. The hard part of learning Tanya is, how do I fit in the Tanya? Meaning, how do I make the Tanya work for me without the Tanya breaking me? And that gets tricky, especially with teenagers, whose world is very black. Adults have the opposite problem. We equivocate about everything, so we take nothing seriously. Teenagers think everything is black and white, so they take everything so literally, so it's either I'm a good person or a bad person. It's very, very hard. But Alter Rebbe wants us to understand, intellectually at least, in Seichel, what are the absolute criteria. And the absolute criteria is that Kedusha is consistent with Tahara. And if I'm doing an action and I have no bad intentions, but if that action is not L'Shem Shamayim, so there may nothing be wrong with what I'm doing, but I'm getting chayes from Klipa while I'm doing it. Because I can't do an action without energy. The energy has to come from some place. If the energy is in Kedusha, the energy is... So the Alter Rebbe inserts into the Tanya the word Tumah. Tumah simply, let's translate the word Tumah as nishterei. Let's not call Tumah dirty. It's not clean. Tahara means clean. Tumah has levels. But the Tumah, which is opposite the Tahara, in the Tanya, it's not clean. How do you explain it in psychology? How do you explain it in Avodah? The way you explain it in psychology and Avodah would be as follows. One of the most useful tools in life is momentum. One of the most useful tools in life is momentum, is inertia. What does momentum mean? I want to do something good. The hardest time to do it is the first. The second hardest time to do it is the second. The third hardest to do it is the third, right? And eventually, in the human experience, when you want to get into the habit of doing something, I would argue that the first time is taka hard. Then it gets a little bit easier, but then you fall into a lull. You fall into a space where you have to fight to keep doing it because now it's not new, you know. If you get over that hump, then you have already a new custom, a new minig, and once you establish that you do so much way, it becomes a lot easier. In every area of life, there is this notion of continuity, of momentum. A person who stops and starts is always exhausted because every time he starts, has to fight again, and then he stops, he starts again. Yeah. This exists in behaviors. If a person wants to change their behavior, the way you change your behavior is you take on a new practical behavior. Ich will sich führen azoi. I'm going to do this. So the first time you do it is hard. The second time you do it is hard. Then it becomes second nature. But it's true also in Ruchnius. It's true also in Machshava. If you're learning a Maimar Chassidus, and somebody walks over to you and just gives you a piece of good news, so-and-so became a kala. It took 30 seconds. Now, I don't know how Mazel Tov lasts 30 seconds. I don't want to get into this for all kinds of reasons of political incorrectness. But let's say you managed to come back to the mimer 30 seconds after you got that news. You have to start over. Not from the beginning, but you were in and you worked so hard and they distracted you. The person, what did I do wrong? I just gave you good news. What did I do wrong? You interrupted me. So it was 30, it wasn't 30 seconds. I need 15 minutes to get back into that space again. Because we know what concentration does. It creates, in English, a fluidity, right? The opposite of fluidity is friction. And the more fluid a person is in their avodah, the more peaceful it is and the more rich it is. And that's one of the things that the Chassidus explains. Why is an avodah so bad? An avodah is not only bad because Hashem said not to do it, it interrupts the flow of Yiddishkeit. It interrupts the smoothness, the ease and the peacefulness. Each time we do something wrong, or even we think something wrong, and we come back to the right space. So that I did an avodah is one thing, but that it disrupted my flow. And depending on the person, there's different madreges in how sensitive they are to this. But all of us know this. All of us know that when I'm interrupted and have to go back to something, it's very hard to go back into the same space. So if I bring tumah into my life, now how are we using the word? How are we using the word tumah? We're not talking about an avodah, not talking about a hirura, not talking about an image which is inappropriate. We're simply talking about something which is not kedusha. So we're translating the word tumah as nishrein, unclean. I had a very good morning. I mean, I'm a yeshiva bracha. I'm one of those rare people. I live in Beis HaMedrash. I mean, most people in the real world, men and women, go to work and they have to make a living and they have to deal with gashmias and ilam hazeh and so on and so forth. I'm lucky. We did repairs to my house this summer, and it was very upsetting to me because I had to stop what I was doing and I had to speak to a goy about windows. But if you're involved in ruchnius, and then you get involved in an activity which is not bad, it's just not holy. Now the meaning of not holy is that your kavanah is not l'shem shamayim. If you're eating breakfast, and while you're eating breakfast, you're thinking that the eating breakfast is l'shem shamayim, that is avodas Hashem. But if you're missing that kavanah, you're just eating breakfast. So what's wrong? There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. But it does interrupt the flow, the continuity of the ruchnius, the kefil. And that's how we're going to translate the word tumah. That's how we're going to translate tumah. Tumah means not clean. And again, I want to be very clear. Not clean doesn't mean dirty. It just means nishterei. For us to start worrying about this, we're not on this madrega. The Alter Rebbe is Chassidim worried about this. Alter Rebbe is Chassidim worried about this. You understand? But the Alter Rebbe puts it in Tanya because the Tanya says emes. And the emes is that for something to be disruptive, it doesn't have to be evil. It just has to be incongruous. It has to be against my flow, my spiritual space, which is that I'm involved in avodas Hashem. And even if you translate tumah as not clean, it's not bad, but it is interrupting that flow, and as such, it's an obstruction. And that's how the Alter Rebbe uses the word in Tanya. And again, he uses the word a lot. And I've never seen a teacher stop and make an issue out of it. And it's been bothering me for a long time, so I'm making a stink out of it. Go ahead. How is that different? No, I'm not asking in how people react to the words. I'm asking in the truth of the words. The truth. The difference is very, very simple. The difference is simple. Is purity a thing? Or is dirt a thing? If dirt is a thing, then impure isn't dirty. If purity is a thing, which is an edel azach, I'm not saying it's not edel, and I'm not criticizing what Tadas HaMishpacha is doing, I'm just making a point. If purity is a thing, then impure is unclean. In other words, the mindset is, Right? There's such a thing called hygiene. What is hygiene? What is hygiene? To be clean and to be not dirty. They're really the same. Unless you understand cleanliness on a spiritual level. In other words, if cleanliness is an end, I don't want a dirty house, so not dirty is clean. But if cleanliness opens me up to something which is even higher than cleanliness, to be clean. Right. No, it's not true. How? Meaning to say, when I'm clean, it's it. It's an end. Tahara, it says in the Mishnah, it says in the Braisa, Mevir L'dei Kedusha. If it's an end, then it's being not dirty. If it's a means to an end, then it's being pure. And this is what I'm trying to separate. No, not true. Tumma is klipas neg. Klipas neg that's not used. Klipas neg that's unused. But once you use it, even if it remains klipas neg, the Alter Rebbe uses the word tumma. Anyway, this is what I'm teaching you. It's a fine. What I want to do is make you understand that Alter Rebbe doesn't mean the word tumma is bad, but he uses the word because he wants us to understand a certain refined idea. Anyway, that took far longer than I thought it would. And after the word tumma, he uses the word klipa and uses the word seter achara. These two words I'm just going to translate very quickly because, like I said, I'm planning on giving you a whole expose on these 4 words in 2 parakim from now. So I'll be bekitzer. Klipa means a shell. It covers. What does it cover? It covers the Eibishter. That's what klipa means. Klipa means a peel or a shell that covers the fruit inside. The fruit inside is the Eibishter. So for something to be klipa, it means it has to deny its relationship with the Eibishter. It's that simple. Klipa means anything which covers over its relationship with the Eibishter is klipa. I'm going to give you an example. A good example. Is mathematics klipa? Is mathematics klipa? It's mathematics klipa. At the worst, it's klipas noiga. At the worst. There's nothing wrong with mathematics. Why? You know why is that? Because mathematics is true. Truth can't be bad. You study other fields of chokhmah, the chokhmah by itself is not bad. But what people do with the chokhmah could be bad. But mathematics is so pure. Yeah? So I'm asking the question again. Is mathematics bad? You can't call mathematics bad. But the mathematics is klipa. Chitonius. Chokhmas chitonius. It's klipas noiga. It's klipas noiga. It's not shalosh klipas noiga. I'm not evil. It's klipas noiga.
Would it be considered like, you know, how Alter Rebbe talks about chokhmas guiding, not like...
It's klipa.
And when you learn it, it's like metame.
Yeah, but it's only klipas noiga. It's metame, the same word tumma. The same word we use this whole class. Tumma does, I'll get to you in a second. Tumma doesn't be evil. In terms of avodas Hashem, it's not pure. Go ahead.
How is mathematics covering it?
How is mathematics covering the Eibishter? Great question. How is mathematics covering the Eibishter? You know what the answer is?
Like science does.
Okay.
Really, no, it doesn't, but it does.
Allah. Okay, welcome to the class. I'm happy to have you. Come again. The answer is because there's no number for God. Of course it is. It's a system. In that system, there's no God. No. Where in the system is the Eibishter? And I'll told you in English words. Mathematics is a system that allows us to interpret the reality. Where is the source of that reality? No, that's not true. It's really not true. If you say number infinity, you haven't studied mathematics. Now, wait, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's what you were saying. Chochmas chitzonius is not treif, unless it speaks about Avodah Zarah, or Gilead Royes, or Shvichas Damim. It's not treif. It's klipas noiga. The problem with Chochmas chitzonius today is that it's been stolen, for lack of words, by people who have an anti-God agenda. But Chochmas chitzonius by itself, so why is it klipa? The famous quote from the 19th century biologist who studied anatomy, and he he finally figured out the whole plumbing of a person, and somebody asked him, where is God? And he said famously, in my model there's no need for God. In my Chochmas Chitzenius, there's not, the Eibush is not a part of the Chochmah. You can't help it. That's, if you put the Eibush into mathematics, it's not true. It's not a part of math. It doesn't tolerate the Eibush. But that's what makes it Chochmas Chitzenius. That's what the word Klipa means. Klipa means that there is something that exists that is fundamentally separated from the fact that it comes from Hashem. That's all. Go ahead.
So when someone like the Rambam, or people that were like on a high level of awareness of Hashem, when they excel in math and science, were they like, they
Okay,
elevated
go
it?
get my classes on chapter 8. And listen, I'm doing chapter 22. I don't have time for hour-long speeches. I'm doing Bekitzit. I'm doing I taught this at length. And go on my website, find chapter 8, and listen to my classes. We talked about all of these things. I'm trying to give a tip of the iceberg. My point is, Klipa is not bad. Klipa means a thing that exists that doesn't reveal Hashem. It doesn't reveal Hashem. You look at nature, you see God. You study nature. You look at nature, see God. You analyze nature, and you create a system to interpret it with laws. God is not in those laws. He isn't. If you'll think about it, you'll see that I'm right. The reality is God. The tool, the Chochmah, it's not anti-God. It has nothing to say about God. God's not a part of it. And the fact that God's not a part of it doesn't make it bad. But it does make it Klipa.
And nature is
Nature itself reveals the Eibishter.
mathematics reveals it.
No, it doesn't. You know what? Maybe you're right, and maybe not maybe, for sure you know a lot more mathematics than I. In my observation of mathematicians and the little math that I've studied, the nature of the intellectual system precludes the Eibishter. When you're busy solving a mathematical problem, you're not thinking about the Eibishter. You're not even thinking about the beauty of math. You're thinking about the process. I can't hear. I understand. So I don't know this person. I'd love to meet him and talk to him. But there's a famous story that happened in my generation. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, they decoded the human genome. And a famous atheist, he was in his 80s, a famous atheist came forward and he said, there is a God. And I remember the reaction. All the Apocryphal Limineim came out. Sheita, Roshem, Gasruach. He became a bottle. They lambasted. A man in his 80s who spent his entire life arguing based on his knowledge that there is no God. So what's the pshat? He saw God in the genome. He didn't see God in the genome. He saw beauty in the genome. And he determined that this couldn't happen by itself. So understand. The process, the system doesn't have God. The harmony in the system, what they call in science, the elegance of the system, reveals God. So when you have to step back and you see the net result, you see God. But in the system itself, there's no number to represent God, because God doesn't exist mathematically, just like He doesn't exist physically or chemically or organically, and so on. You understand what I'm saying? So if someone be klipa, doesn't be bad. But just to not include the Eibishter. So that's the second word, klipa, right? Sitra achara. Sitra achara, the Rebbe translates in chapter 6. Sitra achara means the other side. The other side. What's the other side? If it's not bottle, it's the other side. This is the whole pain of the Tanya as a practical matter. Because you come away feeling like you're such a bad person. Alter Rebbe is not trying to make us feel like a bad person. Alter Rebbe is trying to give us a different perspective. This is called Torah B'Shamayim. When you learn Chassidus, you're learning Torah as it is in heaven. You're getting a heavenly perspective. Put on your seatbelts. The heavenly perspective says that good is in service of God. Good is not, I don't hurt anybody. Good is, I'm doing in the service of Hashem. Not only I'm doing good, I'm doing it as bittul. I'm doing it where I'm putting myself aside for my source. That's the definition of Kedusha. And klipa means everything that's not in that category. And like,
But Strachel is the same thing.
okay, we're getting, yes, that's the word. That even though tumah is such a fine word, and avodah zarah and elikim achedim, which the Alter Rebbe is going to bring later in this Pedic, seem to be so much more gross, so much more grub. Ultimately, they're the same. But like I said, if you want to study this properly, you have to learn chapter 24, Pedic Chav Daled. The Alter Rebbe makes this point over and over and over again. Okay, so let's continue to
They're all not bad.
say that one more time, please.
You're saying all three of them are not bad. Talk about anti-Dracula, you never said any of them were bad. They're all like not holy.
Let's just say they could be not bad. They could be, on the high end, they could be not bad. But when you're learning Tanya, the Alter Rebbe has a problem with them. Alter Rebbe has a problem with them, even though it's possible that they could be not bad. So let's start again. Let's see if we can actually learn something, yeah? V'kol kach, and to such an extent, was Govru v'yotzmu, second line from the top of page 54. Govru v'yotzmu ha-tzimtzumim, was there a greatening and an intensifying of the tzimtzumim, of the diminutions of light. V'hester ponim al yainim, and the hiding of the face of Hashem mamish. Ad, to such an extent, sheyuchlu lehishaves v'lehibares, is able to bring into creation, gam even, dvarim atmeim, things which are spiritually impure, okay, not unclean, impure, uklipis. Klipus means that there's a barrier between them and admitting that the Eibishter is everything. V'sitra achara, they're the other side of bittul. Now, here's the irony. Lekabel chayusam b'kiyumam, they get their life, they get their existence, midvar avaya v'ruach pivis barach. They live from Hashem's words. And as we learned already, the words of Hashem have two parts, oyir and keli, right? When a person speaks words, there's the sounds, that's called the oisiyos, that's called the Dvar Hashem. And then there's the air that comes from the lungs that hits against the vocal cords that amplifies that sound. That's called Ruach Piv, right? Dvar Havaya Ruach Piv. Dvar Hashem is like the goof, and Ruach Piv is like the Neshama. They're living from the Eibishter, but somehow they're living from the Eibishter and being Tumah. They're living from the Eibishter and being Klippa. They're living from the Eibishter and being Sitra Achra. Because there's Hester Ponim B'Yidus HaMadrigas. Hashem has hidden His face and has affected a descent from level to level to such an extent that even though everything they have from the Eibishter, the way they are is Tumah, Klippa, and Sitra Achra. And then he continues, V'lachein, and this goes so far that they're called Nikroyim Elikim Achedim. How do you translate Elikim Achedim in English? Anybody learn in Beis Yaakov ever? Elikim Achedim. Elikim Achedim. Elikim Achedim means other gods. I learned in Beis David. I remember this from the first and second grade. My teacher used to say, when you say Elikim Achedim, you're supposed to say Elohim Achedim. That's right. Why? Because it's Avodah Zarah. And we were raised in Chabad, you say Elikim Achedim. Now Elikim Achedim, why would you say Elikim Achedim if Elikim means Avodah Zarah? So the Alter Rebbe answers why. Mipnei, because Sheyinikusam v'chayusam eina mebechinas ponim, because they're nursing and getting life from Hashem, but they're not getting life from Hashem in a way that's called ponim, face to face. They're getting life from the Eibishter in a way that's called the back of Hakadosh, of holiness. And here the Alter Rebbe translates the word Acherayim. Upirush Acherayim, the meaning of the word Acherayim. Now understand that when you see in Chumash, L'yir l'chol l'kim acherim, you should read L'yir l'chol l'kim acherayim. That's how the Alter Rebbe interprets it. What does acherayim mean? Ka'adam hanei sein davar l'seinin. And there's someone that you hate, someone that you can't stand. And there's a whole Rambam that asks the question, how could there be a Jew that you hate? And the Rambam answers, because he did Avedas, not because he's your bad neighbor, because he did something wrong, you haven't the Jew for it yet. Yeah? You don't like him, but you have to give him something. You have to give him tzedakah, you have to help him out. So Shalei B'Tzeini, you're not enamored with him, and you're not excited about helping him, but the Eibush gave you this mitzvah. So Shemashlich Elei K'La'achak Seife, you throw it over your shoulder. You make sure he gets it. But you don't look at him and you don't give him a smile. Like the Rebbe brings Shmeina miles b'tzedakah. There's 8 miles in giving tzedakah, and the first one is hamafaisei. I give you whatever I give you, but I give it to you with my whole heart. I give it to you with a tenderness. I give it to you with a warmth. I give it to you with a feeling that I care for you and I feel for you. I always tell you the same story. Allah Shalom, Mrs. Pekarsky, Isha Pekarsky told me that when she came to America in 1946, they were really poor. And she's a woman, she was a queen. She was such dignity. And she literally went from house to ask for the She asked people to help her. And she went and asked people in Crown Heights to give her, to help the mishpacha. She came to Yechan and Gordon's wife, the Gehasen Zisa. They lived across the street in Eastern Parkway. And she knocked on the door, and she let her in, and she explained to her that they just came from Europe, and they have nothing, and they need an adava. And she gave her whatever she gave her. I'm sure she wasn't a rich lady, Mrs. Gordon. Yechan and Gordon was a sheikhet. And she said to her, Adank for kumem beten. Thank you for asking. In other words, I wouldn't have known. Thank you for asking. That's special, yeah? That's called hamafaise. That's panim. But if you give the person that you don't like him, so you give him what's called panim ufes. You let them know that you're giving them the money, but you're not giving them your love. This is called acharai. Kach lamayla. Ki machzer panav mimenu. You turn your face away from the person to whom you're giving it. Misinas eitz because you don't like him. You hate them. Kach lamayla. The same is true in Ruchnius. That bechinas panim, who the notion of Hashem giving us with His face is pnim yesharotz and elyon v'chavtei amiti. And these 5 words, girls, ladies, women, Rebbitzins, is the mantra for the next chapter, for 23, which is going to be kedusha. The mantra for 24 is sitra achad o klipa nikra v'yezarav elakim acherim. The mantra for kedusha is these words: pnim yesharotz and elyon, the innermost will of Hashem and His true desire. I'm going to leave it for the next pedic. Asher chafetz bo chas v'shalom, which the Eibita desires. But since here you're dealing with something which is the opposite of Asher chafetz havaya la'ashpia, the Eibita wishes to give life, chayis life, the chalakarav love to all that's near to Him, misrita to kedusha, side of holiness. Aval asitra achara, the other side means not bottle, and therefore again you have the word vatuma. How are we translating vatuma, Mrs. Chaim? Impure. It's the abomination of God that He hates. Now, how bad is it? How bad is it? But to the Eibishter, on the level of Ruchnius, on the level of Pnimis HaTeira, it's not good. It's not pure. And therefore, the Eibishter is not giving her life. If my innermost will that is true desire, that He wishes, that He desires for Chas v'Shalom, but He has to give it life. Where does Klippa live from? The Eibishter. Which Eibishter? The same Eibishter that lives in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There's only one God. And that's why we say Elikim Acherim, because there is no other God. There is only one. Yeah, but what does it mean that you run around saying to the second one? That the Eibishter here has his back turned. And because the Eibishter has his back turned, it seems to you like it's another. And that's why we don't say Elihim Acherim, we say Elikim Acherim. Ki'im, but rather Kiman. The Shadim Basakasvi, one who throws over his shoulder, will send to one who dislikes, Shalei B'tzedi, against his wishes. And this is why the Eibishter creates Klippa. Hashem doesn't want it, right? You have in Medrash, Dein Hanyanli, this I like, Dein Hanyanli, Dein Leyahan, this I don't like. So I remember when the first time I came across that in Medrash, I went to my Rashbi, I was a boy of 15, I said, the Eibishter doesn't like it, why did he make it? So the Teresh is right away, the only reason he made it is, Kedei Lahanish Asar Rishoyim, there should be place to make the Rishoyim pay up. To give good reward to the righteous. La'chafram, the Sitra Achara who bend Klippa. Says the Rebbe, V'zen nikra bechinas acharayim drasne baruch hu. Elikim acherim means the Eibishter with his back turned, mer garnished. So now we have already 4 terms. We have the word Tumah, which you spent a lot of time on. We had the word Klippa, which I did quickly. We had the word Sitra Achara, which we did Klippa. We had the word Elikim acherim quickly. On the bottom of this page, we're going to have the word Avodah Zarah. We're going to do that quickly also, because when we get to Chavdal, we're going to speak about it more in detail. So what does Klippa mean? The Eibishter with a mask. Klippa means the Eibishter, but you don't see that it's the Eibishter. So let's go back to the big picture. The big picture is that in these 3 chapters, we're being given 2 perspectives. One perspective is how the Eibishter sees things. And for the perspective of the Eibishter sees things, Ein Milvada, there's nothing but the Eibishter. The other perspective is how we see things. And from the perspective that we see things, there's two basic levels. There are levels of creations that are Kedusha, they're Batel Hashem, they're Lakus, and there are levels of creations which are Klippa. And today we'll be introduced to this. Okay, and we shall continue next Sunday, Belina, the BL and the R. Okay, thank you all for coming.